Welcome to the FEP Way webinar tutorial video. I'm going to use this video to show you how to navigate the GoToWebinar software, all of its features in order to run a super successful webinar, just like Jonathan Lee has done over the past couple of years. So what you're going to do, of course, first is purchase the GoToWebinar software. We have gone with the Pro option just for all of the different features, like being able to edit the videos, get transcripts, and things like that. I would definitely suggest that option for those of you that want to take full advantage of all of the features, all of the different options that come along with this software, but the Lite option will do as well. The first thing you're going to want to do is purchase the software. After that, you're going to go into the software itself. I would definitely encourage you to look around, touch all the buttons, figure out what your subscription can do. In order to schedule the webinar, the first thing you're going to do is click Schedule in this top right-hand corner. We'll bring you to this page where you'll have to type in the event title. You're either going to pick a live or recorded event for hours each time we do a live event, so that's the option I would suggest you go with. If this is something that you're going to record and use later, or this is something that you plan to do using an event, or a webinar that you've already done in the past, you can go with the recorded option. This is where you would put in the date, the time, when it starts. It's very important that you select your time zone in order to do that. And then what you're going to do is once you've gone through all of this and you have clicked Schedule, you'll be brought back to your dashboard, which is on this top left-hand button here. And I'm going to use a workshop that we already have scheduled so that you can see what all of the features look like in action. It is important to mention that you do have analytics. You have the ability to save and track the videos and recordings that you use. Make sure you take a look at your settings as well. I'm going to use this workshop that we've just recently scheduled here as an example. So what you're going to do, of course, is type in the title of your webinar. It is important for the software's sake, for the invitation's sake, that you type the title first and then do presented by the Financial Education Partnership after that. And then it's also important to come up with some helpful blurbs that are going to give your audience an engaging, interactive experience that's going to let them know in advance what the webinar is going to be about. Make sure you check your time, your date, as well as the language that you'll be using. As for the organizer, that is going to be whoever the account is made with or underneath. Your panelists are going to be whoever is speaking. So if that's you as the educator, you would put yourself in here. You would put your own email address, as well as your first and last name. And if you have anybody else that's going to be featured, it's important that you add their name and email here as well, because it's going to send them a separate email to gain access to the webinar. So this is important because that email is going to be unique to the panelists. So nobody else is going to have that login information. And that way, if you need to pass the presenter controls during the workshop so that they can toggle and use and show their screen, then that way they have the ability to. Otherwise, they'll be a guest and they'll only be able to use their audio, and they'll have no controls over their screen, over really anything outside of the audio. I would suggest leaving this send email to all participants blank, unless you plan to reach out to the panelists to notify them of a change. Otherwise, if you do change anything up here, they'll be getting multiple emails, which isn't very ideal. You'll never have to add payment, so I won't spend any time there. As for the settings, we have ours set to automatically start recording, and down here you'll see what the organizer and the panelists will be able to use to gain audio. Please note that you will not see the audio pin until you've started the actual webinar. All of the other codes that you'll need will be down here, but it is important to remember that the panelist email will contain these codes. So you'll really only need to rely on this if you need to come back and maybe forward that information later. The welcome message here at the bottom is pretty much just a simple thank you message that they're going to see in the chat box once they sign on. So when an attendee arrives in that small chat box, they'll be able to see hello or thank you so much for attending XYZ workshop presented by the Financial Education Partnership, and ours says we can't wait to connect with you. In this next box, you'll find the list presenters in the waiting room. Again, that's where you're going to go put your panelists. You're going to put their bio pictures, you're going to put their first and last names, you're going to put their title, and of course you're going to put the Financial Education Partnership in that organization box. And it is important to note that this option is what people will see when they're in the waiting room. So when the webinar has not started yet and they're just waiting for the organizer and the panelists to jump on and start, they'll be able to see the pictures and the title and the organizations of the people that they'll be seeing in the webinar. So for the branding and the colors, you're going to put the FEP logo. And then what we've done here for our feature image is we've saved the first page of the workshop that we'll be using as a JPEG, which is a picture. And we've uploaded it here so that way whoever registers can see not only the logo, but they'll get a sneak peek at what the content will look like. For our feature color, we've picked this blue option. For FEP, we're going to have you click this green option. And then you're able to click preview registration page here to get an idea of what people who receive your registration link, what they will see. So they'll get to see the title, they'll see your logo, they'll see the date and time, the blurbs that you wrote about the workshop content, as well as that JPEG image of your workshop cover. We do have the required fields for registration here. And we've added an extra question down here about how did you hear about this webinar, and I'll show you where that is and how to navigate that here in a second. So now we've got our registration together. We're going to skip share event for now. We're going to go to registration because this is important. You're going to set your registration limit to whatever the capacity your subscription holds. You may not have this source tracking option, but if for whatever reason you do, you will be able to differentiate the different sources that you invite to your workshop. So if you have two different organizations that are going to attend the same workshop, you're able to click this and you're able to create a individual link for that particular person or that particular group, so that way you can track the different registrants and where they're coming from within the webinar. So you would essentially type in host number 1, for example. We'll do host 1, and then we'll click create. And then if I scroll down here, it'll give me a link. Make this a little smaller so you can see it. It'll give me a link, and I'm going to copy that just so you can see it. It'll give me a dedicated link that I would give to that host instead of the registration code. So that way, host one can ask how many people from my group attended the workshop, and I can give that host the same option. And I can also make one for host 2 as well, and that way we can have separate tracking links. And that's going to be really important when you have different groups coming from different places. As for the registration questions, you're going to click edit. For our group, we're always going to require the phone number, the organization, and you're going to just select these check boxes, and then you're going to put a star next to a blue star next to the ones that are required that people must answer in order to complete their registration. You can put your nonprofit disclosure here in this box, but you do not necessarily have to do that. But for us, we're always going to select the phone number. As a requirement, GoToWebinar always includes first, last name, and email address. But for the data collection piece, it's always going to be helpful to get a phone number to know what that person does and the organization, just so that you have a clear idea of who's registering, and later on you can look back and have an informed conversation with that person. Here we have our setup for automatic approval once they've completed registration, and I would definitely suggest automatic approval. If you do manual, you'll have to confirm each person, and for a group, that's going to be tedious. For your custom confirmation page, this is the website that your attendees or your registrants will see once the registration is complete. So you're going to want to make that www.feponline.org, or feel free to use your unique web bio underneath the FEP website. Send registration notification. I would suggest sending an email to yourself, so that way you can kind of have an idea of who is registering. They'll come to your email. It'll be very organized, so that way you can kind of get a feel for when people are attending. If you are into the analytics of these type of things, you'll be able to see when people register more in the morning versus at night, over the weekend versus during the week, and so on and so forth. Down here, you'll see total registrants, and you'll see the number of people that have registered so far. You are able to click that and then download that option so that you can get all of the information that people put in while registering. You can share that as well, and you can always click this and see the exact registration invitation that they would have selected to sign up. So now that we've gone through the registration, we're going to go back to share event. I would definitely suggest doing this portion at the end, but this registration URL is the URL that you're going to send people to. This is the link that they will get in order to sign up for your webinar. So you can email this invitation to yourself, and that'll give you the opportunity to see it from the attendee point of view. You can copy and paste the event info. You can also preview the event info as well. And that is what it'll look like. I would suggest creating your own email and just copying this link and putting it in the email so that the email is nice, it's been formatted, it's a lot more pleasing to the eye, and it maybe include your JPEG of the cover of your workshop along with the blurb. So that way it's just a lot more inviting. People will be able to get a little more of personality and personability in that, as opposed to you just sending it straight from GoToWebinar, which can come off a bit dry. So now we're going to go into emails. So the reply to is important, because whoever responds to your invitation, whoever responds to the link, this is the person that will receive those inquiries. You're going to have it set to have reminder emails sent out 1 hour and 1 day before the event starts. You have the ability to set 3 reminder emails, so we also have it set so that 2 days before they also get an email. And you can use this as another way to communicate within that reminder. Of course, it's going to have your date, your time. You can make it a custom message and say something personal if you like. And that's just going to give you the option to communicate as another automated reminder, so that you don't have to physically manually reach out. So it says confirmation email to registrants. This is, of course, that confirmation email. Again, this is what people are going to get as soon as they register. So right after that, if someone reaches out to you and says, hey, I registered and it took me to the FEP website, you can say you'll receive a confirmation email in about a minute or 2. Check your inbox and let me know if you don't have it. If for whatever reason GoToWebinar is overwhelmed and a bunch of people are registering at once, then you have the option to also have them forward you the invitation and their contact information, and you can also register them yourself. People really like that, especially when their computer is slow and they get the spinning circle that freezes their computer. If you have that ability, I definitely suggest it. And so here it says follow-up email. So your follow-up email is going to contain your survey. Your follow-up email can contain your recording. It's going to say a thank you for attending. You can have this set to be sent out the same day as your workshop, or your webinar. We do it the day after, and we do that for a few reasons. We do it the day after because that will give us the opportunity to make sure that if we have another workshop coming up, that we have all of the logistics laid out so that we can put that in our note here. Make sure you keep an eye out for our XYZ workshop coming up in a week. And it'll also give us the opportunity to kind of tweak it, and if we want to include the email, we have that availability. You can also, if you're going to put your email, if you're going to put a video in your email, you'll just select to include the video, and it'll save that option for you so that that day after, everything will automatically go out. And the same thing to the absentees, those that didn't follow up, or the ones that didn't actually have the opportunity to attend the workshop. It'll say, we missed you, and I'm sorry that you weren't able to attend our webinar. Stay tuned for the next one. And again, just for the convenience, we include that recording there as well. And so now we've got engage your attendees. So down here is where you'll put your hand out. If you want to do a poll during, you can do that there. And this is important. This is where you're going to put your survey questions. This is going to be sent out automatically. We send it after the webinar. It'll launch right after the webinar. They won't have to click anything. As soon as they exit, it'll pop up. And then we also include it in the attendee follow-up email and in the absentee follow-up email. And we do that just in case they missed the webinar after, they missed the survey after the webinar has ended. This is just in case somebody that attended catches it in that follow-up email, somebody that didn't get a chance to register and watch the webinar with everyone else. Maybe they've got this link and now they'll be able to watch it later. This will still give them the option to complete that survey and let you know if they want to be contacted. So here are some of the questions. Please rate the overall effectiveness of the webinar educator. Please rate the overall topic of the webinar. What's your investment experience? How far are you from retirement? Do you know of other organizations who would benefit from a financial wellness webinar? How can we get in contact with them? Would you like to speak one-on-one with a financial wellness volunteer? If yes, please, what is the best number to reach you on? What other financial wellness topics would you like to receive more information on? So these are the questions that we use. We try to keep it very short and sweet so that people are more inclined to fill this out entirely. If you want to go in and change the questions, or just to kind of give you an idea of what the responses look like, you can click these three dots here. And I'm going to click Edit Questions so that you can see. And it says rate on a scale, the type of question. And so it really goes into the different options that you have. And then I'm going to click Preview just so you can see what it looks like. And that is essentially how you are going to set up the webinar. Now, what I would suggest is creating a practice webinar. And this is what you're going to do 48 hours, no less than 48 hours before your workshop. It's important that you know how to use the software, where your buttons are, how to use this as an organizer. And then if you are if you're an educator that has help or a panelist, how to navigate those features. And to do that, you're going to create a copy of the webinar. You are not going to practice with your actual webinar. So you're going to create a copy. In the front, you're going to put test run. You can invite your staff so they can tell you what they see. You can just do this to just learn how to use the software. And I'm going to press schedule because it's going to copy everything. But I'm going to unselect these options so that none of the panelists receive the information to join, since this is just going to be a practice run. But if you do have your panelists available for that practice run, if your speakers, if you're ready, I would definitely include the staff, but just for test purposes and this recording purposes, I'm not going to include them. And now that my event is created, I can click these three dots and go to practice. And this is going to open the software. This is where I'm going to be able to learn about all the different features within the software itself. And this is really going to be the most important part to making sure that your webinar goes smoothly with no hiccups. It's important that you test your audio in advance. It's important that you test the audio and you dial in from a phone as opposed to a laptop speaker, because your laptop, depending on your Wi-Fi connection, your internet connection, your location, could be spotty, and a cell phone is always going to be a lot more reliable. As you can see, it's opening the software. It's telling me that this is the test run option that I've selected. And now what we're going to see is in this corner, we are going to see all of the things that we'll need to take advantage of the webinar. So I'm not going to press start because this is just for the recording, but you will be able to see the audience view here. I'm going to see if I can make this bigger. You can pop that out. So you can see what the audience sees here. You want to pop it in, you'll just click that top box on the right. If you are going to, if your panelists are on in this practice run, you'll be able to press change presenters here. And when you're ready to show your screen, if that's something you're interested in, you can click show screen. As far as the webcam, if you're going to use a webcam, make sure you test it. Make sure you're in a well-lit, very quiet space with an attractive background. If you're wearing a white shirt, a white wall behind you may not be the best option as you'll blend in. This audio option is where you'll actually either dial in using the audio pin we mentioned earlier. Again, you can use the computer audio, but I highly suggest just using a phone that's more reliable. Your dashboard is going to show you how many people are in attendance, if you have any questions, any hands raised. Your attendees will pop up here. It'll show you if they are, if they're muted, if they're not muted, if they have their hand raised, if they have unanswered questions. It goes into who can take over the keyboard and the mouse. Typically, you won't have that option available to your attendees. And if you want to mute them, you can press mute here. If you want to lower all of the hands, you can do that. If you want to invite somebody to the webinar, you can click invite and it'll pull up that option. You can copy the invitation and send them or send them an email. If you want to search through your attendees to see where they are, that's important. All of your panelists will be underneath staff here. So you notice in the beginning I was in attendees. If you're going to use your panelists and find those folks, then you'll find them in your staff. If you want to do polls, your polls will be here. If you want to answer any questions, your questions will be here. It is important to mention that you can send the response privately to the individual that asked if it's not a group question. If you want to reply to all of the attendees so they can all see the answer, you can do that as well. If you want to put in handouts, you have the option to drag and drop 5 different files. Again, you can also do that in that last box where it says engage your attendees in the actual software. And then this very last box down here is a chat box, and that's where you'll find that welcome message that we mentioned. If you want to draw, you have that option. You can pick a pen, a cursor, a highlighter, erase all of the drawings, even choose your pen color. And just know that if you are in practice mode and you press start, you will start the actual workshop. Practice mode is simply just to test out all of your functions and your features. When you press start, you will start the actual session. And so if you're going to press start on your dry run, it's okay, because you are still in a dry run. It'll only be viewable to whoever has been invited into the dry run. And there's going to be, of course, a totally separate registration link for that. But if you do not do a dry run and a test option, and you use your actual webinar and you press start, you will start your webinar early, which could throw a lot of things off for you. So definitely make sure that you only practice in start mode with your test run webinar. So that is essentially how it works. When you're ready to end the webinar, you can click this file button and come down to exit and end webinar. Something else to add is that your panelists, if you pass the presenter controls, they cannot end the webinar. The organizer will still have to technically, officially end the webinar, and you can also just exit out of the software, and it will say end the webinar for everyone, where you would say yes, and that is essentially how you would navigate the webinar software. Please note that you can delete your test run. You will not be able to delete it until you're actually complete with your test run. So that way, that avoids you pretty much deleting a webinar while somebody is live. But yeah, that is how you use the software. That's how you would successfully run it. You can, again, do upload a recording, and it'll have the same exact features and options. It'll just have no live option event. And if you have any questions, definitely let me know. I hope this is helpful. I hope this shortens your learning curve, and I hope this enables you to have hundreds of attendees, and if not thousands of successful webinar recordings.